Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. It's no secret that reggae music was born on the rugged streets of Kingston, Jamaica in the late 1960s, before its infectious rhythms took over the world by the end of the next decade. Today, it's a global phenomenon and dominant genre of music, but there are places where it enjoys an almost religious following, and one outstanding example of this is the beautiful South American country of Brazil. This massive nation has at least 500 radiolas or sound systems, numerous reggae festivals that draw massive crowds every year, and a homegrown organic sound called samba reggae. And I dare say that it has the largest reggae fan base of any single country on the globe. And cities like Sao Luís do Maranhão have their indigenous cultures deeply intertwined with Jamaican culture and Rastafarian imagery on a level that I haven't seen outside Jamaica itself. I've always been aware of how big reggae has been in that part of the world, but I really got inspired to make this video since I went down a magnificent rabbit hole of Brazil's phenomenal artists and groups like the sublime Ponto de Equilibrio, whose music is of the same incredible quality as the best of Jamaica's roots reggae bands from the golden age of the 1970s. All these factors led me to ask a big question: why is reggae so big and popular in Brazil? Now this story begins with the most unlikely event. There was a military coup in Brazil that took place on the 1st of April 1964 when the Brazilian armed forces toppled the president João Goulart. The military dictatorship opened the doors to plenty of repression and terrible excesses against the masses, and even artists weren't immune from all the abuse of power. In 1968, two musicians named Gilberto Gil and Caetano Veloso were arrested and held without trial for 2 months for allegedly singing the national anthem in what the government felt was a subversive way. After they were released from jail, the military government, led by one Costa e Silva, forced them to leave the country on exile in February 1969. Along with their wives and manager, they moved to England and settled in London in a neighborhood called Chelsea that was right next door to a neighborhood called Notting Hill, which had a very vibrant and rich Caribbean community. Gil and Veloso's arrival would coincide with the explosion in the popularity of the now world-famous Notting Hill Carnival and the magnificent rise of reggae music in England. They would immerse themselves in the music and Rastafarian culture and began to incorporate elements of it into indigenous Brazilian sound, and inadvertently would create samba reggae. Gilberto Gil in particular was heavily influenced by the works of the Wailers, Burning Spear, and his favorite in Jimmy Cliff. After 3 years, the military junta allowed them to return home in 1972, and Veloso would open a samba reggae account with a song called 9 out of 10 that described the reggae scene in London. But while the pair had been away, Brazil had gotten its first taste of reggae energy from the genre's first true superstar in none other than Jimmy Cliff, who had arrived in that country for a tour in 1968 and won first prize at the Rio Song Festival with a song titled Waterfall that also became a smash hit in Brazil. That same year, Jimmy Cliff released the album named Jimmy Cliff in Brazil, a compilation that combined the reggae sound with Brazilian classic songs. Reggae would catch fire in Brazil by the 1970s, and after Gilberto Gil invited Jimmy Cliff for a tour of Brazil in 1979, the genre was officially introduced to the country, and Gil's cover of Bob Marley's No Woman No Cry, which came out in 1979, became a smash hit in Brazil. And by the time the tour was over, Jimmy Cliff fell in love with Brazil and lived over there for several years. The infectious rhythms and general brilliance of reggae music was of course the main catalyst for its incredible acceptance over there, but social and political factors will also play a vital role in cementing its popularity as a part of Brazilian culture. Jamaican roots reggae songs, which were loaded with vivid descriptions of life and hardship in ghettos like Trenchtown, would resonate heavily with Brazilians whose urban experience consisted of life in crowded favelas or slums in places like Rio. And it was out of this sense of frustration that Brazil's indigenous reggae scene really took off. And like the Nyabingi drummers like Count Ossie and his crew helped form the foundation of reggae in Jamaica in the 60s, a Brazilian collective or movement of drummers called Olodum would truly perfect the samba reggae sound. The first time I saw or even heard about this group was when they appeared in the Michael Jackson video They Don't Care About Us in 1996. And it was out of Olodum that the likes of singer Lazzy Matumbi would emerge in the 80s. And by the end of that decade, artists like Ruby Confetti, Pedrinho Batara, and Moreno would emerge as well. Jamaican artists and producers also recognized the immense power of Brazil's reggae scene, with the likes of Island Records, who opened a branch there in 1980, which was launched by Chris Blackwell, Bob Marley, and Jacob Miller, and also popular producer Joe Gibbs and longtime collaborator Errol Thompson also opened a studio and office over there in the same period. And in addition to the unbelievable popularity of Jamaica's biggest stars like Bob Marley, the likes of singers like Eric Donaldson and Jackie Brown of the Maytones are almost worshipped over in Brazil. And Eric Donaldson in particular is so popular that he's had many of his songs covered by local artists in Portuguese, and is also a citizen of Brazil and spends at least 3 months a year over there, not to mention the numerous reggae concerts that he plays at. But despite the genre's general popularity nationwide, the reggae capital of Brazil is the bustling coastal city of São Luís do Maranhão. This place, with 1 million residents, in my opinion, is among the biggest and most reggae-centric places on earth. In fact, it became Joe Gibbs' base when he opened up his studio in Brazil. And also, reggae artist Honey Boy also lives there since he moved from the UK in the 90s. And the city also hosts the Reggae Maranhão Museum, which is the first of its kind outside Jamaica and the second in the world. Nicknamed Brazilian Jamaica, that city's reggae revolution had a head start on the rest of the country when in 1968, a resident called Ribu Macedo traveled to another city and heard a record titled Monkey Man by Toots and the Maytals. He bought that record and brought it back to São Luís, and when he played it at a party, it became a local phenomenon. That city is today filled with countless sound systems, or radiolas in Portuguese, and reggae is blasted on every street, club, or cafe, not to mention the reggae festivals that hold there all the time. And generally, Brazil hosts numerous reggae festivals every year, like the São Luís do Maranhão Roots Reggae Festival, República do Reggae, and Juichi Rasta Limoeiro de Norte, with Brazil's homegrown reggae superstars holding it down big time, with special shout-outs to icons like Edson Gomez, Leo Roots, the Echo Sound System, Armandinho, and so many others doing their thing in Brazil at the highest level. And for those not too conversant with Brazilian reggae, I advise you start with my favorite group in Ponto do Equilibrio, and I've left a link to one of their songs in the description section to this video for your listening pleasure. Brazil's reggae scene is sizzling hot and shows no signs of cooling down anytime soon. And even though dancehall today has overshadowed the traditional roots reggae sound on a global scale, I'm comforted that Brazil has provided a musical time capsule that still churns out passionate, authentic, and fundamental roots reggae sound that is alive and reminiscent of reggae speak from the 1970s. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.